Ian.
Hello, Dave. And today we have a guest. We've lured yet another unsuspecting person. My good friend Joe Wertz is here.
Hello,
Joe.
boys.
Hello, Joe.
Excited to be here.
It's fantastic to have you.
Well, thank you.
So Joe, other than being a fantastic liar, is the climate editor for Colorado Public Radio.
That's it.
Yeah. And so we've known each other for a long, long time. You used to work with my wife.
That's true.
Back in Oklahoma.
Yes.
And in between there, you've had a bunch of different jobs, but your beat has kind of been, for the last several years, the climate and environmental concerns as a whole, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Sorry, just thinking about it. For the last decade, my beat has been exclusively climate, the environment, energy, by way of climate and the environment mostly. Mostly in Oklahoma, and then I went to DC for a few years to do some investigative climate reporting, and then over here, where we are now, Denver, to work with Colorado Public Radio. I run the team there. We've got 3 really good journalists covering climate and environment exclusively, which I think is the biggest climate team outside of some of the really big coastal news outlets like the Times or the Washington Post and stuff. So we've got a really big team and a dedicated station.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So being climate centric, and like I could tell, like the 10-year, like the decade, like once you were doing the math in your head, I could see the 10-year hit you mentally. Right? There was that pause where it was like, oh, this number just got real, right? Like when you went to 2 digits, right?
Sure.
How do you, as someone focusing on climate centric things, how do you not walk into the ocean every day? Like, do you get, and also, if this is a cliche question, I apologize. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's not. It can be a lot. I mean, the stuff that's immediately risky is scary. I mean, we're coming up on peak wildfire season here in Colorado.
Yeah,
probably a dozen fires burning across the state right now as we sit. So that's scary. I've covered lots of severe weather that's worsened by climate change. That's just immediately scary. But I think what you're hitting on is sort of the existential dread of covering this beat. And that's there. I'm probably, I don't know. I don't. As far as environmental journalists go, I would think that this would put me in a weird small category. But I'm actually an optimist about this stuff. I genuinely think that we're going to figure this out. I don't think it's going to be pretty or easy. I think there's going to be consequences along the way. Those are going to be unequal. They're going to hit some people more, and that's not to be taken lightly. But I do think this is a problem that we can solve, and that humans are survivors, and we're good at adapting. And there's an entrepreneurial case, I think, for figuring out a lot of these problems, right? These big building blocks that are the kind of tentpole problems in climate change. There's an incentive to figure a lot of this stuff out. So I'm an optimist. I think it'll be rough and a bad time, but I guess a short-term pessimist, long-term optimist, I guess is the way to put it.
When I hear pragmatic, right? Like, right. It's not just like, like it's going to be fine. Like mission accomplished banner behind you.
Yes.
Woo! Right. Climate check.
Pack it up, boys. We did it. No, it's not going to be like that.
Right.
But I think there is a pragmatic case for, non-long-term climate alarmism. But, in the short term, there's a lot to figure out and a lot going completely haywire. So,
Sure.
Not to ignore any of that or be glib about any of those problems. And, but I do think there's big incentives to figure this out. Not least of which is survival.
Right.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
go ahead, Ian. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I think we're in the same place, but that, I think that we sort of talk about this discussion as though there's like three possible positions. Like, we're doomed, everything, it's all hoax and there's nothing to worry about. And then like the middle ground, but that middle ground represents like infinite number of like possible scenarios, right?
Absolutely. If you just, statistically you look at this bell curve, that there's a big chunk in the middle that represents a lot of different outcomes in there. And I'm somewhere in there. I think the answers are somewhere in there and the problems are somewhere in there, but you're right. It's a spectrum and a gradient, and not three positions. There's not a centrist position and a doom and a Pollyanna position. Right.
Exactly. And I think what something that we talk about a lot is how, sort of like all these competing interests are sort of competing for one of those possible outcomes.
Yep.
In the middle. And, car enthusiasts should be part of that conversation.
Sure.
Because those are going to be really like, intentional things that happen along the way. Right. So if you want to be part of the end result, if we want to have a space for our hobby in the end result, then we need to be part of the conversation now.
Absolutely. And I will say that if you're a car person or a tech person, there's a lot to be optimistic about and a lot of cool stuff going on. I mean, that's the space where there is cool stuff going on and stuff to be excited about and get into. So if you geek out on tech, you geek out on cars, if you geek out on infrastructure, which seems absurd, I recently had CPR is a great transportation reporter, Nate Miner. He was recently added to my team because there's a lot of climate crossovers there. But he's just he geeks out on transportation stuff, and I've gotten super into that stuff too. And it all links into this car stuff and this tech stuff, and so out of everything. A lot of this, I think, there's no reason not to be excited about some of this stuff coming down if you're a car person or you're a tech person. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and things are happening at such a breakneck pace.
Right.
Absolutely.
The things that are happening and the things that are going to prolong like automotive enthusiasm do not look the way that they used to, right? They're not like, the Chevelle with the 454. Right. They're not, like no catalytic converters, right? The landscape is changing, but enthusiasm is still present, right? And I think that carries through like a lot of pastimes that impact the climate in a negative way, right?
Yeah, although it's not pastimes that are a lion's share of the problems, with the climate. It's one person in a car going to work. That's a big chunk of the problem.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not hobbyists having whatever indulgent, emissions indulgent activity that they're doing. It's not, hobby pilots, out for VFR flights on sunny days with their kids, that are the problem. It's just enormous, tons and tons and tons of jet fuel and in commercial airspace. So I absolutely agree. Although I think, I don't know, maybe I think some of the worry is misplaced.
Well, okay. And I think that's absolutely right. And we on the show have talked a lot about like trying to delineate between car culture, which I think a lot of people use that term to mean both like enthusiasts and hobbyists, but also America's and the West's like reliance on individual cars, and then commuter culture, which I think is a better description of the latter piece of that.
Boy, and commuter culture is tough to crack. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you in a place like Colorado, certainly in a place like Oklahoma, where I'm from, I mean, it means something more to people. It represents something. It's a visceral thing. I mean, we get every time we write about electric cars, public transit, trains and buses and bus rapid transit and we get lots of feedback from people that are worried that their cars are going to be, that they're, these are not enthusiasts that are worried about their
Right.
their old Camaro they're working on in their garage. These are people that just don't want to be told how to get to work every day.
Right.
And so that's a bigger question, and a tougher one, because I don't know, people feel something different about that, that they react have a real visceral reaction to.
Hey, tell us a little bit more about that dialogue between like kind of the feedback that you get versus that reporting.
Well, I mean, we stick with what, we want to report, we want to meet people where they're at and report, report fairly on this stuff. I mean, we do talk to, drivers who are worried about this. We talk about the struggles. On one hand, you've got city planners, you've got transportation planners, and in some cases talking out of both sides of their mouth. They on one hand are very much trying to enact policies that discourage things like single drivers, going to work every day. I mean, they've talked here in Colorado about, finding major employers, maybe people with, companies that have 100+ people there, and fining them if they don't offer work from home or don't offer some sort of carpool option or a public transit eco-pass type of thing. And then, at the same time, they'll want to assure people that we are building more roads. We're not going to stop building roads. We're not going to stop maintaining them. So, on one hand, it is a form of sort of engineering, social engineering. And then on the other hand, they want to assure people that they're not doing that. So it's tricky. We do want to report both from, it's not a both sides thing, but it is we want to hear from people on that, because it is a big change. And frankly, public transit is not where it needs to be for people to get where they need to go. I mean, I spent 2 years in DC. We had sold a car before we went there. The other car just sat in front of our house for 2 years, because you could just get everywhere you needed to be on the metro, essentially. And it was, I liked cars. I didn't love the idea of selling my car, but you just don't need it there. And that's not the case here. And it's certainly not the case outside of Denver.
Right.
It's just not set up, and we're a long way from doing that. So, yeah. I don't know if I answered your question, but I do think we want to hear from both of those people. And there is both a strong constituency of people all over the place that want to keep their cars, that want to drive, and then people that are mass transit, walk it, bike it, type folks. And then there's people that say, maybe we don't have to discourage people from driving if they're taking a hybrid to work or taking an electric car in.
Right.
Yeah, I think that argument's very interesting. That's another whole other can of worms, right? Because then you talk about like how the electricity is generated and how far you have to drive the car before.
Who can afford an electric car and a level whatever charger that plugs into 220?
Right. Yeah. Are you going to street park an electric car? I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that gets opened up with that. But I think one of the things too that's interesting about Colorado, at least, is like, I think that the people who would advocate for more public transport for sort of Monday through Friday day-to-day activities, and trying to design the city to have less traffic and all that sort of stuff, would also really want their car for the weekend, right? Because we have that granola crunchy people who love to go out and hike, and you're not going to build public transport to every trailhead in Colorado. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Well, they are going to put an electric charging station at every park.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think they're making big moves on this stuff. I mean, you're right. there is, I mean, the range anxiety is real. It's still a
Right.
real problem. But I mean, we did a story on the mayor of Salida, who's this weird, funny guy who owns like a bar down there. He was like one of the first, was one of the first charging stations like kind of out there. And it was just like a long bet on like, I'm gonna pull people in. And I think at first it was like a novelty. You know, people came down there to, you know, it was like the place where you could go take your Tesla, stop for the day, come back. And, you know, it really worked out for him. Now he's the mayor and he's expanding this. He's big on it. He's inking these deals. You know, he had some, I think Rivian wanted.
Yeah, he's in a fight with Rivian right now about.
Yeah, Rivian wanted to install. It's got a proprietary charger, and he was like,
Mhm.
"Nope, not doing it." And so they're going to install. I think they're going to install like non-proprietary chargers along with his proprietary charger in order to like.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but so I think we're seeing this stuff. People are not going to want to be left out, you know, of this stuff, at least on a tourism level. But people are going to get left out of being able to get an electric car, afford it. What do you do if you live in an apartment? How are you going to charge that thing? Yeah, I think there's major equity issues with this stuff, but things are moving quick.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So shifting gears for just a second. So I just want to, you know, we've known each other for a long time, and like we've talked about cars a lot over the years. You know, what is your kind of like, what was sort of your like first like, oh, cars are cool sort of thing? Was it magazines? Was it like a neighbor that had a car? What was it that kind of drew you in? I know you had a motorcycle for a long time.
We kind of call that car puberty.
Right. Yeah.
Car puberty.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I've always been into like mechanical stuff and like wrenching on stuff. So I've always been into that. I had a neighbor that had a mini bike, a little trail, you know, Honda Trail, that I was absolutely obsessed with. My mom wouldn't let me go anywhere near it, maybe nowhere near this kid in particular. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Adorable little mini bike. Yeah.
Wait, no, that's a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look up maybe Trail 50, Trail 70.
Okay. Sure.
There we go.
These little
It's
guys.
like a pit bike.
Yes. Yeah.
so-
Dermot and the Venture Brothers has one of those.
Yeah, the yellow one's awesome.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, yeah, I probably the anti-car guy thing. I just was super into mechanical stuff, wrenching on stuff. I love that stuff. My first car was a '86 Bronco. I loved that thing. I loved working on it. I loved bolting things onto it.
That's the
I bet
OJ Bronco, right?
I have really bad news for you, Joe.
What's that?
That thing is worth an insane amount of money now.
It is.
Yeah, I left for college. It was not a super reliable car when I left for college, and my dad sold it.
Yeah. Because it was just an old car then.
It was just an old junk car at that point. Yeah, I loved that car. I really loved wrenching on it. My neighbor had a cool Land Cruiser that I loved. That was that first, not the first one, but the second one with it looked like a Wagoneer body style. You know what I'm talking about?
I do. Yeah.
That one was sweet. I had a friend that had a 944 Porsche Turbo, this rich kid I knew. That car was sweet.
Sure.
Scary car. Yep, that's it. And yeah, so I had a bunch of friends with interesting cars. I had a friend with an RX-7, which was awesome. Had a friend with an old Supra, not the 94 body style, but the one before that, the Batmobile looking one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mark III, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, all those cars, love all those cars. But really into the mechanic stuff, which is how I got into the motorcycle stuff. Bought an old Honda bike, and loved wrenching on that thing, even if I never really got it working that well. I still have that bike. It's back in Oklahoma.
Oh, you
Nice.
do? Oh,
Yeah.
you need to bring it out here. It'd be
I
perfect
know.
for around.
I got it in a
Denver.
guy's garage down there. I was kind of secretly hoping he'd wrench on it a little bit. he's a Snap-on dealer.
Okay.
I thought maybe he'd work on it a little bit, do some of the stuff I don't know how to do.
Well, if you pay him in installments for the rest of your life, probably.
My mom had a Miata, the original first gen Miata. That thing was awesome.
Yeah. Right?
Name Miata,
Yeah, there it is in the middle there with the blinky lights,
Pop-up headlights.
pop-up headlights.
Right?
Yep, that was sweet too. That's probably worth a lot now.
I mean,
Finding an untouched one is crazy hard. Yeah, but yeah. Right?
So there's actually a company out of Grand Junction called Flying Miata. They are very famous for building super fast Miatas, like V8 swaps and turbo swaps and that sort of stuff. Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, we had a pulley system to get the hard top, like hoist it to the ceiling and back.
Dave just moved into a house with one of those in the garage, and we were like, "What the hell is this?"
It's for a Miata. It's for a Target Top, either a Target Top IROC or a Miata.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was thinking some kind of topper adjacent, use case. Yeah,
probably
nice.
A canoe though here, right?
Well, I live on a golf course now, which is just insane. But it's probably some golf bullshit. Who knows? Yeah, something with clubs or tees. I don't know. Yeah,
I keep telling Dave that I'm gonna go over to his house and drink a whole lot, and then just start throwing golf balls out onto the
little golf club psyop.
Yeah,
I like it.
You're welcome anytime. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to play a game, Joe, and I think this will spark some more conversation about our main topic. So this is FMK cars. Dave, do you want to explain?
FMK Cars is a game we play on the show. It's based on the classic game of Fuck, Marry, Kill, but instead of playing it with people, we play it with cars because we're not gross and we don't objectify people like that, right? So we're going to give you 3 cars, and after you're presented with those 3 cars, you get to decide FMK. F means you drive it for a day. M means you marry it. That's your daily driver. K means you send it to the crusher. You don't get to enjoy it at all. All right. Now, you grabbed a pen and paper like aces, Joe. Like you're crushing it. I love it. And there we go. So, Ian, does this one have a title? Ian loves writing titles for these.
It does. This one is called Maintaining the Status. Whoa. Cars with a Policy Twist. Okay. So in this one, you're going to get a car, and then you're going to get a way in which you get to make decisions about our collective transportation and climate policy. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So the first one is a 2021 Tesla Model S.
Okay.
We live in a Musk-esque utopia with mandatory autonomous electric cars.
I have a theory about this later we could get into.
I have Elon talk on the thing, so I'm excited to talk about it. But no other changes to mass transportation or city design, and we'll say roughly the same mix of power generation. As we have now. Okay.
Do all our children have to have weird like names with ampersands and?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're all gonna be named after fucking Star Wars characters now.
Okay.
All right. So the next one is a 2021 Ram 1500 TRX 4-wheel drive.
Okay.
I picked this specific one for a reason that will become clear. You can design the transportation policy for the entire United States and how that transportation is powered. However, you may not avail yourself of anything but the Ram, the truck. Also, the truck is vinyl wrapped with the combined fuel economy number. That'd be 12 mpg, which makes it the worst fuel economy of any car for sale right now outside of like a Rolls-Royce. And obviously, this makes you a social pariah.
Okay, just to be clear though, you get to then design the transportation ecosystem.
You're in charge, yes.
But
so that in mind, keep in mind that if you had designed your ideal system to be not car hospitable, that means you're stuck with the truck. You can't then take public transportation.
Got it.
Yeah. Last one. 1961 Lincoln Continental convertible. The world of climate policy and transportation is as it is today. No changes.
And that's it.
And that's it. You have to live with the fact that you decided not to make any changes. Now Joe is taking notes because he's a professional reporter.
What color do you want?
Making us uncomfortable because we're not used to professionalism in our midst.
What color do you want your Connie, Joe?
Is there a mint green?
Oh,
we can make one. We can. Yeah,
there we go.
There's a close. Yeah, there we go. A little teal
awesome.
action for you.
I like that.
Yeah, right. Love those
That's
cars
awesome.
so much. Yeah. Yeah, we're all just silently staring at a picture of a Lincoln Continental. Doesn't necessarily make for a good podcast, but hey.
Great radio. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good looking car.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So you have the Tesla Model S, the Musk-esque utopian society, right? The Ram TRX, where you get a clean sheet of paper and you have at it, right? But you are stuck with the TRX.
Okay.
And everyone knows it gets 12 miles to the gallon.
Okay.
The Lincoln Continental, and things just are the way they are.
Okay.
You just walk away. You pull like Val Kilmer in Heat in the white Camaro. And just drive.
So are we
away.
all playing this, or is this just for the guests?
This is just for you, Joe.
Okay. This is okay. I got it. So I'm killing the Lincoln Continental.
Wow. Okay.
I don't think it's acceptable that things are not going to stay. Are things staying same is no course for us. So, and if they were going to stay the same, this would not be the car to make that argument. So,
Okay.
We're killing that off. I think I would F the Model S.
Okay.
I would like to dabble in the Musk verse, but I don't think I want to be permanently there.
Okay.
They seem fun. I've never. It seems like they seem fun, but I don't think the long term. Long term. I don't want to live in the Musk verse.
Right.
Which leads me to marry the Ram 1500 TRX. My argument is yes. First off, it looks kind of fun.
We're all like, I'm from Missouri. You're from Oklahoma.
Yes.
This brings out that stuff.
Yeah, it brings out that.
Right.
Could I? So being stuck with that seems awesome. It seems problematic going forward. But if you get to design the system, I think you'd be a pariah. You say pariah. I think you'd actually be a martyr.
Okay.
And so
to be clear, no one's going to know that you're responsible for everything else.
It's fine. I think I would bite the bullet, have a lot of fun in the 1500 TRX. I'd be one little blip by changing the whole transportation system, which I would outsource to people much smarter than me. And then I'd move out to Missouri or Oklahoma and ride this thing around where people wouldn't have to see the 12 mile per gallon vinyl wrap. And those are my answers, and I'm sticking with them.
I like it. Just ripping dirt roads is a life I want to lead. I mean,
in a utopia, right? In a transportation utopia. That
you'd probably have to hoard gasoline like you're Mad Max.
That's true.
Okay. I like that, Ian. That was well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get a feel, for where the priorities are. Is it fun? Is it altruism?
Yeah, I was going to say, Joe's not looking out for number one.
Turns out you're a good person, which is obnoxious. All right.
That TRX is ridiculous.
Right? Yeah, we
It does look fun though.
we were at a press event a while ago, back when those were still a thing, and they put us in a Ram. I don't know. It was a Ram Power Wagon.
Power wagon.
and it brought out all the Missouri in me. Like it all. Like
His accent changed. It was amazing. That's awesome.
Arthur Bryant's barbecue sauce started coming out of my pores. Yeah. No, it was great. Yeah, trucks, man. But yeah. So okay, all right. So
Dave, what would you do really quick? Do you know what your answer is?
I would do I would marry the same thing. I would live that truck life for sure, right?
Yeah.
And then it would just be like mountain bike shuttle runs and everybody's arguing over who gets to rip up the hill in the truck, right? Normally nobody wants to be the shuttle driver, but in this case, that's what everybody would want. That's how you fix that problem, by making it a fun car, right?
There you go.
And then I think I would, for a day, I could enjoy the Continental, right? And just know that, you know, I'm not doing anything, but it's only for a day, right? We all got to take a knee every now and then, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and then I will crush the Tesla and try to figure out how to responsibly recycle the lithium from the batteries, but you know, who knows? Ian and I have a friend that has a Tesla Model S, and I think one of the great things about the one that he has is that it's used. It's like a 2014, maybe 2016. It doesn't have the autopilot stuff, and I think he's completely capable of just enjoying it for just the car itself. Like all of the stuff, like without, like, he doesn't go on Twitter and like instantly, like, you know, clap back at people that have valid criticism of Tesla, you know, like he's just like, he's capable of just enjoying the thing for what it is and like calling it a day. Right. And Tesla owners that are capable of doing that are great, you know, and they're cool ass cars. They're big, but they're cool. But yeah, the Musk-averse, you know, yeah, I don't know. And then I don't even know what a Muskian utopia would look like, you know. I
think we have a glimpse. I think we've seen a glimpse of it.
Yeah.
The rich are putting themselves on spaceships.
Yeah, it's Elysium.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Did both of you get the same really weird feeling when like we first saw those Falcon 9 rockets, like those three land on their own? Like it was a weird feeling that I have no words for. Right?
It was a little
I don't
strange.
know.
Yeah.
Like, it was weird.
I don't know. I feel like I'm different after seeing that. It was like seeing like a Marvel movie, but like in real life. Like, I don't know. That messed me up. It messed me up.
Just the motions of it?
Yeah, it just didn't seem real, but it was. Like, it kind of shook me. I don't know.
Well, one of them then exploded.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that always happens with those things.
Okay.
Well, but I think what we're all kind of circling around is what Joe mentioned earlier, is like the equity problem of some of the like the innovation that we're moving towards, right? Is like, I think the problem with sort of the Musk vision is it's all Halo car without the rest of the stuff behind it to kind of bring to the masses. And I think that he and Tesla absolutely deserve credit for like pushing the auto industry to
No question.
make big investments and making electric cars cool and getting people thinking about them. But like the reality of it is not the utopian thing that I think some people believe that it is.
I picture a little like Jack Donaghy when like he's trying to like, he's like, well, you go to the grocery concierge and you say, I'd like 1 sack of potatoes. How much could that possibly be? $400? Like Elon's not thinking about people who live in apartments that don't have 220 outlets owning electric cars. He's not thinking about that. He's like, well, yes, you get out of your helicopter and then you like that, like kind of putting himself in that person's perspective is not something that is happening. Right.
Right.
And I don't have a point after that.
Well, I want to ask about the sort of fight that we're seeing form. So there's like the classic on the left circular firing squad sort of forming between sort of this wing, the Elon wing of like high-end electric cars, autonomous technology, which is a huge thing, and then people who are like, no, we need to get away from the car as a concept that we base our lives around in general. And like they're both, supposedly we're all working towards that same goal of getting to one of those outcomes in the middle that we talked about earlier. But we have like huge disagreements about how we get there and what that end goal ends up looking like. And I'm wondering from just that perspective, you talked a little bit more about the people who are just kind of averse to hearing about changing things in general, but like, how do you navigate that in your reporting? Like the two kind of big pulls from within the left of that argument.
I mean, the poll is the story. I mean, we want to report on that and hear about it. So, I mean, it's not much to navigate. We just tell people, what the prevailing, forces are and what regular folks have to say, as much as possible about all this stuff. It seems like some of this stuff is gonna self-select into pragmatic solutions. I think cars are car as a unit of transportation is a problem regardless of emissions. So even if it's zero emission car, you still have to think about where people are going to park, right, how they're going to move around the city. You still have to think about how cars interact with people walking around, people riding bikes. We saw really this forced experiment in a lot of urban centers during the pandemic, where a lot of places shut down city cores to open up dining, to just give more, basically to let restaurants spill into the streets. And a lot of these, cities want to keep that because sales tax receipts soared through the roof. People were out doing, spending, living in a way, in an amount and in a way that cities want to preserve. So, that is separate from a question about emissions, right? I mean, that type of plan, if you want to embrace that, would exclude a Tesla the same as it would a PT Cruiser. So I think, some of this stuff's going to make sense in a city and make sense in an urban environment that wants people to live and work a certain way, or the people there want to live and work a certain way and bike around and walk around. And it's going to make a different equation will make sense for people that live in rural areas or live in Colorado Springs, where there's, more space and more single family homes. I feel like some of this stuff is going to segregate out and frankly, you don't need as much of a managed solution in a rural community or rural state, even maybe, than you do, you do a tightly packed urban core. So again, not to be a boring pragmatist about this stuff, but I think some of the stuff will sort itself out. The question now is like people that are already like commuting to an urban core in a car and parking and getting out and stuff like that. I mean, it's going to be, whatever that transition is going to be tough. There's going to be growing pains for that too. I also think we're going to see in the future growing pains for communities that aren't able to, that are maybe rural communities that aren't able to upgrade infrastructure fast enough to keep up with what I think is going to be a real revolution which is automated, like trucking and like transport, like freight type of stuff. So I think we're going to see a race for that too. So I think there's going to be inequities across the board and a lot of growing pains here, but some of it seems like it'll segregate out in ways that'll make sense.
So you touched on something in your answer there that I want to pick out a little bit, is that you mentioned that cities want to keep the expanded dining and the kind of the reduced space in the environment for cars because of sales tax receipts and kind of the increased revenue. And that really drives home the point that like it's really all about incentives rather than it is, you know, a sense of altruism or you know, really anything else. There's a lot of like short-term incentive design that we can do. And I'm just wondering if there's any other things that you've come across in your reporting that are like that have been positive, even though they're like short-term incentives that just drive people to do something that's long-term positive.
In general, or dealing with transportation stuff specifically?
Oh, you know, I mean, in general, I mean, transportation. I honestly, I can't think of, of another example other than the one that you already cited. But
well, I mean, you know, incentives are tricky. I mean, it just depends on what you mean by incentive. I mean, you've got incentives that are essentially just subsidies, and then you've got, you know, some government entity, you know, picking something that they want to support, or
Right.
maybe the people want to support, but you know how that goes with politics. So that stuff is always tricky when it comes to the government picking this stuff, picking who to incentivize and what to incentivize. But I mean, you know, I'm not an expert on what type of stuff works, but I do think. It helps to try stuff. So we have a data point, and we know what does or doesn't work. I mean, there's incentives are a big cornerstone of a lot of renewable energy. I mean, we've got wind incentives and solar incentives. To some people, that's made a big, you know, helps subsidize this stuff so it gets a foothold, and then the prices come down, and then, you know, it's in place, and that's the only way this stuff is gonna work or survive or get a foothold in an industry where dirty energy is cheaper and more abundant, stuff like that. So I don't know I'm not an economist when it comes to understanding all the structure on this stuff. But as somebody that reports on it, I mean, you know, it's nice to see experiments done, and we always look for that and look for the research about these experiments.
Yeah, we've kind of had a massive experiment thrust upon us with COVID, right? Like,
yes, we have.
The landscape has forever changed in like remote work attitudes, like all of this kind of stuff. Like, we saw what empty roads looked like. We saw like exactly what our kind of footprint was on a day-to-day basis. And like, I mean, there's people now that are quitting their jobs when they're being asked to go or forced back to the office to look for other jobs that will allow them to remote work, right? Like their personal culture has changed 100%, right? And that was foisted upon them. And like we talked about earlier in the show, what happened? Humans adapted, right? Like we adapted to that. We learned that there was a model out there that works better for us on a personal level, right? And so here we are, right? So whether it's like an incentive or like looking at something as awful as COVID is like, well, there's still some good things that have come out of it, right? You know, we're going to be faced with kind of this like buffet of like a few things that kind of drive or change this landscape, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you've got a lot of, you know, a lot of reasons people want people back to work. I mean, there's a lot of downtown commercial real estate that depends on it. How many weirdo little restaurants exist downtown,
right,
or little weird businesses that only are there to serve people that work in an office tower? I mean,
right.
My building's got a little coffee kiosk at the bottom of the building. I mean, they're not taking customers off the street. It exists to serve the 19 businesses, you know, in that building or whatever. So, you know, there's a strong incentive to do that. The government has an incentive to do that. They make, you know, tax money off of you know, property value and people parking in meters, I'm sure, and all this stuff. So you know, how do we reorient that stuff? But you're right. I mean, we're in the middle of an experiment. People are saying, no, I'm not going back to work. And you know, we'll have to see, but it is really fascinating. But I thought we saw a big surge in car buying too, right? During the pandemic, people wanted to get out of town.
RV sales, van sales, like all of that stuff, just truck sales, like that went through the roof. Like trailers, like that shift in like individualized or self-packaged
Yeah, you can't
experiences and
get
trips.
in a national park right now. I mean, you have to get there
Yep.
before sunrise if you're going to look at anything other than another person looking at stuff.
Oh, I haven't even been to a national park since
Yeah.
before COVID. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we
nuts.
went through Arches, and it was crazy. It was also like the Jeep Safari because we're idiots, but it was crazy there. We were there super early, and it was packed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just go urban spelunking and be all on our own. Like, who wants to walk through an old Avaya building?
Let's just get one wheels and hit downtown.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Right? Yeah. No, like when the streets were cleared and everything, and maybe, I can't remember if you said this, Ian, or not, but like, I have a drone. It was like, I want to go, should I go fly my drone around on like completely empty streets? Like, I honestly, it is a great idea, but I couldn't bring myself to it because it made the whole like stress of the situation way more real than I could mentally handle. I was dealing with a lot, not as much as some people, but I work in healthcare, so it was a lot, right?
Sure,
and I'm one of those people who is never going back to the office. Like I've made the switch personally, like I did all my driving today after 4:30 p.m., right? And like, yeah, so I don't know. I'm different. I see no reason to go back to the office on a regular basis, but yeah, but that's me, and so the way that I'm enjoying my car is different now than it used to be, right? Like, and what I would focus on in like my car buying choices, right? Like I used to have a longer commute. I bought my first car with an automatic transmission, because of a commute. My second car, I have a big posh Lexus. And it's because it's a comfortable place to be, right? Like for that long commute, but now like I'm going to look at something more fun,
Getting a rat rod.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Just
Or lowered Volkswagen.
A Honda Trail,
that's a good option from
yeah.
someone who works
5'10" with a roll cage.
Yes.
See,
Why not? Why not? Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's different, man. It's a different time, and so I hope that the climate impact, like the stuff that has happened during COVID, has kind of kickstarted some positive action towards like one of those positive outcomes, right? That it's been more of a contributing factor to a net positive than a net negative, right?
Yeah, it feels like we broke the bolt loose. I think it was a forced thing, but man, change is happening. And change is happening quick. In a climate future where people are taking public transit in or carpooling or working from home, and then they have a fun car that they use to hit, get out of town on the weekend or go motor up in the mountains or something like that. I think from a climate standpoint, that doesn't seem like a bad outcome.
Right.
Yeah. It's just how do you get there, right? How do you dismantle sort of commuter culture while still preserving the infrastructure that you need to be able to do that other stuff, right? Like, how do you? That's the problem. Is going to be.
I mean, do people love commuting? I mean, people commute all the time, but I mean,
a few weirdos really do. In general, no. Yeah.
No, I commuted to work in a car every day up until I moved to DC, and then I walked or I took the metro, and it's just a better, more convenient option. You're just going to work. You're going to come home. It's just whatever scheme you come up with to get to work and get to groceries.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I'm not talking about it from the human aspect of it. Yeah. I'm talking about it from just the literal like physical space of like building a rail line. You have like a chicken and an egg problem where you have to move like X number of people through this X number of square feet.
Absolutely.
And so that's one part of it. And then the other part is, the money side of it is also a zero-sum game. And then at the end of it, do we have roads to drive on and gasoline to buy, or all the gasoline stations going to go out of business? Like there's a lot of ways for that to go, for it to go wrong between here and there, and like only a few for it to kind of have that outcome, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think gasoline's going to go away anytime soon. It may make your hobby very expensive at some point,
right?
But
yes.
But I think, man, you'll be able to get gasoline for a while, Ian.
Not to take
buying shotguns.
Not to take a darker turn, but like, what are the kind of like broad strokes that do kind of keep you up at night?
Climate wise?
Yeah. Or just like, I mean, we can just unpack the therapy session, right? So tell us about your mother.
Yeah, I mean, climate is unequal. It hits people unequally. The worst of the effects are felt by people that are have the least resources to deal with it. I mean, I covered Hurricane Katrina refugees coming into Oklahoma from Louisiana. These are people that could not afford to go stay in a hotel, did not have, family with extra space, that could put them up. So that stuff worries me a lot short term. It's low income people. It's Black and brown, non-white people that are often bearing the brunt of that. And that's, I have a fairly narrow scope of being mostly focusing on things here in the United States, and then laser beamed here in Colorado and the Mountain West. But I mean, the story is even more harrowing outside of the country. I mean, you look at any of these developing countries where it's just, orders of magnitude. The problems are just orders of magnitude larger. So that scares me and freaks me out.
Or places where like the highest elevation is like 6.
That's right. Absolutely. There's plenty of countries that already don't have reliable infrastructure, reliable power that are in harm's way. And man, I mean, you look at the frequency and magnitude of extreme weather and hurricanes and wildfires and things like that, floods, things like, things of that nature. That worries me. Air pollution stuff really worries me. We're just in the last few years getting a lot better science on the impacts of air pollution and health. It's we've always known that there was a strong link, but I've covered this a lot, but really only in the last several years have we really gotten, there's been a congealing of the science around this stuff, and it's just it's nasty and it's bad. Again, low income people, black folks, Latino folks, largely exposed to this stuff. The kids exposed to it are really vulnerable.
Yeah.
We're just seeing huge asthma upticks, and this stuff is bad. So all that stuff really worries me in the short term. I don't see a lot of that, a lot of quick fixes coming in for any of that stuff. So I think that's that's the stuff that keeps me worried.
Sure. Hey, what do you think like kind of keeps you going about that? Like what gets you out of bed in the morning? Like what gets feet on the ground besides like morning coffee espresso? Like, yeah.
Well, I mean, this is I think the most important topic of the moment. I think it crosses, we draw these lines on a map, and environmental reporting and climate reporting scrambles all that. Today in Denver, we're breathing smoke that are coming from some fires here, but a big percentage of it is coming from fires in Utah that are burning over there and coming across here. In Oklahoma, we used to get the smog in the air at our national parks came from big coal-fired power plants in Texas. So we're all linked together in this stuff, and it forces a coming together in a way that you don't see in other beats. So it forces these conversations to be big, to cross government lines, to span lots of stuff. And there's, everything is connected. I mean, I used to hear all the time, I covered, there's this weird spot in Oklahoma where the price of U.S. crude is set. It's in the middle of Oklahoma. It's where there's a pipeline crossroads in this little town called Cushing. There's a bunch of storage tanks there. It's where people will store a bunch of oil and bet that the price is going to go up. And then it goes up, and by the time they pump it into the line, they just make money hedging on that stuff. So they've just got this massive tank farm. It looks something like out of a Blade Runner movie. But whenever I would go to a conference or something and I would tell somebody, like an international journalist, where I was from, they would always ask about Cushing. These would be people from London, people from Japan, people from the UAE, the Middle East. Because if you were following this industry, you would know what was going on in Cushing. You would know how much oil was there. In some cases, you're flying planes over there to look at the shadow that the tops of these floating tanks would cast, so that way you could try to guess how much oil was in there, because that would give you a trading edge. And so you just realize that you're in this, what you think is a middle of nowhere, but it's not the middle of nowhere. It's connected. There's some Saudi oil baron that's hiring some pilot to fly over this thing every day to tell him.
Woke up thinking about Cushing, Oklahoma.
Right, exactly. So it's a weird way that brings all these weird interests together. I would have no other. If I was in a room with a Saudi, oil minister, we could talk about Cushing, Oklahoma, and probably talk for a couple hours, and that's super weird.
Right.
And so
it is very weird.
It is super weird. So that's exciting about this beat, and this type of coverage is how connected it is across the planet. And then I think, look, it's exciting. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of energy and focus on it. Some of the smartest people are working on this problem. Some of the most innovation is focused here. It's a lot. And also, look, there's scamsters, hucksters, robber barons, and this stuff too. There needs to be a lot of accountability.
Cast of characters, right?
Got everything you need.
Okay, yeah. Like, what's a weird climate centric thing that's happened recently? Like, give me some of the scammers. Give me one of the weirdos.
Gosh.
I want somebody that's, I don't know. Yeah.
But enough about Elon.
There's all sorts of stuff. I mean, there's stuff every day. We get all sorts of stuff about something being the next climate solution. It's some guys invented some
free energy thing.
Free energy thing. Right.
Right.
Gotcha. So, I mean, there's a ton of stuff. I'm sure there's a Theranos in the climate space somewhere.
Gotcha. Ian, we need to somehow get ourselves to be the climate juicero.
Yes, exactly. I love it.
Okay.
Well, I think we did a car-ish show.
Car adjacent, certainly.
Adjacent show. I thank you so much for coming on, because we've been talking about these sorts of stuff for a long time, but it's been, obviously, one, from the perspective of a car enthusiast, and two, not super well informed. So it's been awesome to have you on and kind of either validate or tell us we're idiots.
Yeah, hopefully it wasn't too much policy talk. I do love cars and wrenching and stuff. I'll come back on and we can just talk purely about old Honda motorcycles or something.
Yes. We're going to take you to either a track day or karting or both, and then we'll have you back on and we'll talk about just fun stuff.
We've been karting once, Ian.
Oh, we have.
Oh, you have a karting backstory with Ian. How many times did he ram your cart?
There was some dodging.
I think I was probably just a hey.
That's how he always frames it. That's how he always frames it.
Yeah.
Pip.
I don't remember. That was that pole position in Oklahoma City, right? Which is no longer in existence, unfortunately.
It is not. No.
Pour one out.
No.
Yeah, pouring out for pole position. Karting is very strenuous. I had no idea.
It is. It's quite the workout. Yeah, it's like the very nerdy CrossFit, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Dave took me karting on Friday, and I got home, and it was so strenuous that my wife took a picture of my back to show me how awesome my sweat pattern was. It was pretty embarrassing.
It's too bad we don't have a picture of that for the show, Ian.
Oh, what a
Yeah.
shame that I stole her phone and ran it through the dishwasher.
Well, Joe, we really appreciate it. So tell the folks where they can find you, what they should do to look for your reporting and your team's reporting.
Yeah, you can Colorado Public Radio, tune into it, cpr.org. You can get our climate newsletter at cpr.org/climate weekly. We put that out once a week. Lots of climate stuff, a lot of electric car stuff. We're doing a ton of electric car stories, infrastructure stories. So if you want to geek out about, not only climate science, but weird weather, transportation stuff, bus rapid transit, 220 plugins for your car, heat pumps, all the weird tech stuff. That's a good place to go.
Nice. Okay.
Awesome.
Right.
And Dave, where should people go if they enjoyed whatever this was?
Well, follow us at Apex Adjacent on all the things, right? If you see a weirdo out there in the world with a vanity plate that makes no sense whatsoever or is just disgusting, text it to 720-515-1391. So do those things for us.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Joe. We love you. Goodbye.